Doing your weekly raids in Destiny 2 is just about the only fun thing left for us Guardians to do. But even these raids feel like a chore and we want to do them as fast as we possibly can. Just finishing these raids and moving on to a different game while we wait for the final shape to come out seems to be the trend lately. So in today's video, I want to give you 15 must-have weapons that will speed up your raids dramatically because these are the best weapons to use inside of raids. I'm going to be giving you 5 kinetic slot recommendations, 5 energy slot recommendations, and of course 5 heavy slot recommendations. So without further ado, let's start with the kinetic slot weapons. First weapon on the list is the Scatter Signal Fusion Rifle. This is by far one of the best fusion rifles in the entire game that has obviously come to us this season. Now the Scatter Signal obviously goes in the kinetic slot, but it is also strand, meaning it can combine very well with your strand subclass. The gold roll for this weapon can either be Overflow and Controlled Burst, or Enlightened Action and Controlled Burst, depending on how you like to play the game. This is my go-to weapon when I'm fighting Crota and I'm on the Oversoul duty, or if there is any need for a fusion rifle in doing boss damage, which there also always is. Next on the list, we have the one and the only Izanagi's Burden, which is the exotic sniper rifle. The Izanagi's Burden and a rocket launcher is one of the easiest and most well-known combos for damaging bosses in the game, which is basically just a hot swap between the Izanagi shot and then an auto-loading rocket launcher. This is the most simplest and easiest way to do some great damage to bosses throughout the game. Everyone should be already aware of this combo because it is very simple and everyone uses it. So for some reason, if you don't have an Izanagi's Burden yet, I definitely recommend you go and get one. Coming in at number 3, we have the Heritage. Now this is a slug shotgun that comes from the Deepstone Crypt raid, which is also craftable. Slug shotguns in the game do some serious damage when you're up close and you can hit your critical headshots. There's definitely plenty of bosses in the game where a double slug shotgun combination is needed and it is the most effective. 2 great examples of this is the Templar in the Vault of Glass raid, and then you also have Kali in the Last Wish raid. The Heritage is a great option to put into your double slug combo, being a kinetic slot shotgun, which is also craftable, meaning you can get a perfect roll on it. The gold roll for the Heritage is Reconstruction and Recombination, making it a pretty much perfect slug shotgun perk combination for doing boss DPS. But even if you aren't even doing boss DPS and you're just using it for ad clears, if there is ever any yellow bars that are easily crittable, these enemies will die very quick with the shotgun. Moving on to a hand cannon, we have the Fatebringer. Now the Fatebringer is an amazing hand cannon, one of the best in the game, definitely the best in the primary slot, and I definitely recommend you do Vault of Glass until you can get an Adept version. Or for the Vault of Glass version, it's actually a Time Lost. Either way, Time Lost or Adept, they are basically the exact same thing. The gold roll for the Fatebringer is Explosive Payload and Firefly, and a close second is Explosive Payload and Frenzy. An Explosive Payload and Frenzy gold roll on the Fatebringer is actually a double weapon damage boosting perk combination, making it one of the best hand cannons in the entire game. Now finally, for the last kinetic slot weapon that I recommend the Succession, one of the best sniper rifles in the game. This one is also from the Deepstone Crypt, and the gold roll is also Reconstruction and Recombination, very similar to the Heritage. Sniper rifles in general just don't really hit as hard as they used to, and they're not really used. But there are definitely instances in the game where you could be using a sniper, and the Succession is a great one in the kinetic slot. Let's move over into the energy slot. Now my first recommendation here is the Zhao Bane, one of my favorite hand cannons in the entire game. This one comes from the King's Fall raid, and it is also craftable, meaning you can get that perfect 5 out of 5 gold roll. Now the gold roll perks is Explosive Payload and Incandescent. The Zhao Bane is especially great this season because of some of the seasonal artifact mods that obviously boost all of your solar damage, that work very well with both the Polaris Lens and also the Sunshot. Now I didn't put these 2 weapons on this list because outside of this great solar season, these 2 weapons aren't really good. However, the Zhao Bane is very effective outside of the season, minus the solar boosting perks. Then the next one is the Word of Crota, another great energy weapon to use that comes from the Crota's End raid. The Word of Crota can have 2 very rare perks that only this weapon and a few other guns can actually have in the game. These 2 perks are Dragonfly and Destabilizing Rounds. Both of these perks will cause massive void explosions, and then not to mention you also have the Cursed Thrall origin trait on the gun, meaning that whenever you get a melee kill, your next few shots will also cause explosions. Meaning this weapon can have a triple explosion on any headshot kill, making it one hell of a weapon. This is a great weapon for killing ads in the game, and I love using weapons in my energy slot as primary weapons, freeing my kinetic slot up for special damage weapons. Moving on next, we have basically any SMG in the game that you like using, depending on what subclass you're running for said raid. A great example of this is the Callus Mini Tool, the Ichlos SMG, and the Funnel Web. All three of these are Solar, Arc, and Void, and I like to switch between them all depending on what subclass I'm using. The gold roll for the Callus Mini Tool, in my opinion, is Unrelenting and Incandescent. The gold roll for the Ichlos SMG is Feeding Frenzy and Vault Shot, and then the gold roll for the Funnel Web is Subsistence and Frenzy. So like I said, I use all three of these SMGs on rotation depending on what subclass I'm using. Like most players in Destiny would recommend, they usually leave the energy slot up for a kinetic slot weapon. Now what I mean by this is weapons in the energy slot that actually use kinetic ammo. Weapons like hand cannons and SMGs are great for clearing adds. Doing this will allow you to free up your kinetic slot to use massive damage boosting weapons like the Heritage, like the Izanagi's Burden, or some sort of fusion rifle. And that's why my next recommendation is the Graviton Lance, the best pulse rifle in the entire game. This weapon is unbelievably broken, and it is still great no matter what season it is, or even what subclass you're using. But if you're using it with Void, it's even better. This weapon kind of recently actually got a 70% damage boost or something ridiculous, and this weapon is definitely the hot stuff at the moment. It is great no matter what season it is or what subclass you're using. It is amazing to use. If you're on ad clear duty, make sure you put on a Graviton Lance. It will clean them all up in a matter of seconds. Now my last recommendation here is a fusion rifle, the Merciless. The Merciless has to be the most slept on fusion rifle in the energy slot in the entire game. This does more damage than any other fusion rifle in the game, and it does it almost twice as fast as any fusion rifle. Its exotic perk, Conserve Momentum, basically means every time you hit bullets, it's going to decrease the charge time of the following shot. After a couple bullets, you can shoot this thing off incredibly fast. It also has a trait called Impetus, which basically means reloading after a kill increases the weapon damage for a short time. So not only can you boost your damage, you can also rapidly increase its charge time, making it just dump a whole magazine in a couple seconds. Moving on into the heavy weapon category, let's start off with one of the best rocket launchers in the game, and then that is the Apex Predator. This weapon comes from the Last Wish raid, and if you don't have one by now, you are doing something wrong. Get your hands on an Apex Predator. The gold roll for this weapon is Reconstruction and Bait and Switch. Everyone knows about this gun, it's amazing. Reconstruction will reload the gun while you don't have it out, and then Bait and Switch will give you a 35% damage boost, although it will decrease to a 30% damage boost in the following weeks, but I still believe this is still going to be the best perk to do damage with. My next recommendation is the Commemoration, one of the best machine guns in the entire game for ad clearing and even boss damage if you need to. This weapon comes from the Deepstone Crypt raid, and in my opinion, the gold roll is Reconstruction and Killing Tally. Reconstruction will reload this gun up to double its magazine, and you can hold over 130 bullets in one magazine. Now, Killing Tally will give you a 30% damage boost after killing just 3 ads. Killing Tally is one of the best weapon perks in the entire game, especially on a machine gun. Now with this 30% damage boost, if you have to damage a boss, just kill a couple ads around the room and you have a free 30% damage boost to kill the boss with. This is my favorite machine gun in the game, and if you haven't got one, try and get one. Next on the list, we have the Tractor Cannon. This is just a gun that every Guardian should have in the emergency that they need it. You might not use it, but it's always handy to have and pull out if someone else in your group doesn't have it, if you ever need to use it. Pretty much every boss in the game that you're doing raids with needs to be Tractor Cannon debuffed, so someone on your team has to have it, so I definitely recommend you go and grab it. The Doomed Petitioner is another amazing weapon that came to us this season, a linear fusion rifle. Now the gold roll for this one is Reconstruction and Precision Instrument, making it one of the best linear fusion rifles in the game to do boss DPS with. Precision Instrument will give you a 25% damage boost, and that is very simple to get. All you have to do is just chain 6 headshots, which is very simple with a linear fusion rifle. This one is obviously craftable this season, so if you haven't got one yet, I definitely recommend you get it. Now the final weapon on this list I recommend is the Lament. Now I wouldn't usually recommend this one, but since the most recent raid is the Crota's End, and a Lament is basically a must-have for killing Crota, I'm going to put this one on the list. After all the Crota's End runs that I have done with random LFG groups, there has been an enormous amount of players in the groups that just say I don't have the Lament, and I'm just confused as to why they don't have it, since it is almost a must-have to kill Crota with. Not only is it a must-have for Crota, but you can technically use it in other bosses in the game. The Lament does amazing damage for a sword, and since the Crota's End is the most recent and most relevant raid, I definitely recommend you guys go and get a Lament if you don't have one. But anyway, Guardians, that will wrap the list up there. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, feel free to drop a like, subscribe, comment down below. And let me know in the comments what your most favorite raid weapon is. But anyway, Guardians, again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Later.